Hello everyone, this is Victor Mikhalevski for the ChessWorld.com with the art of positional sacrifice. And my first example is the game Mikhalevski Bryant from the National Open 2012. I started the game with c4, knight f6, g3, g6, bishop g2, d5, c takes d5, knight takes d5, knight c3, putting pressure along the a8 h1 diagonal, knight b6, knight f3, bishop g7, short castle, d3. White prefers the English opening. d4 would lead to the greenfield defense. So after d3, black continued knight c6, bishop e3. White's idea is to play either queen c1 or queen d2, which will be followed by bishop h6, exchanging the strong dark squared bishop on g7, and thus weakening the dark squares. So black plays h6, which I answered with queen c1, attacking the h6 square and leaving the d2 square for my f3 knight. King h7, protecting the h6 pawn. The rook goes to d1. One of white's ideas is to support advance of the d pawn. So black plays e5 in order to stop d4. Bishop goes to c5, attacking the rook on f8. And after rook e8, e3. So once again, white is ready to play d4. And black plays bishop d7. This move is a novelty in the game Tal Jansa Sukhumi 1972. Black played knight d7, but after bishop a3, a5, knight b5, knight f6, d4, e4, and knight e5, white was better. So in the game, black played bishop d7, which I answered with b4. So before playing d3, d4, white is going to play b5, forcing the c6 knight back, and only then d4. So black plays queen c8 in order to create an escape square for the knight. b5. The knight goes to d8. And finally d4. So it seems that white achieved what he wanted. And black plays bishop g4, pinning the f3 knight. And his idea is to meet d takes e5 with knight d7, which is a double attack on c5 and e5. Now after bishop d4, black can play c5, b takes c6, knight takes c6, and even though white is still better after rook b1, Black managed to untangle his position a little bit, and so in the diagram position I decided to go for the positional exchange sacrifice. Knight takes e5. So white sacrifices the rook on d1. Black has to take. Bishop takes d1, queen takes d1. And it turns out that the ensued position is very unpleasant for black. First of all, if he takes the knight on e5, then after d takes, rook takes, bishop d4, the dark squares are extremely weak, especially the f6 square. And so white may consider bringing his knight to that square via e4. So after queen takes d1, black decided to exchange my strong knight on e5 by means of knight d7. Knight takes d7. It doesn't make sense to play bishop h3 because black can... this move is a pin, of course, an attack on d7, but black can just play knight e6, knight takes d7, queen takes d7, and in case of d5, black can simply take the knight on c3. So after knight e7, white simply trades the knights. Knight takes d7, queen takes d7, and then a quiet move, rook c1. The rook is very good on this file. As the pawn on c7 is potentially weak. And also the knight on c3 is now protected. So black plays a6 in order to develop his rook from a8. So white just plays a4. He wants to keep the pawn on b5. And then the pressure on the weak b7 pawn remains very strong. So a takes b5, a takes b5. Black has opened the a file for his rook on a8, but it turns out there is nothing to do with the file. Black plays rook a5. But the move doesn't create any threats. And it's time for white to create new weaknesses in the black's position. And so white plays h2, h4. With an obvious idea of h4, h5. The idea is to weaken the light squares, and so the position of the black's king will be vulnerable. In order to prevent h4, h5, black plays h5 on his own. And then queen f1. This is a nice maneuver. White's idea is to play bishop g2, h3. And it turns out that the queen on d7 has no moves. And black will have to play f7, f5, which weakens black's position even more. In particular, the g5 square is getting even weaker. And another idea behind queen f1 is to play queen c4 and to put pressure on the c7 pawn along the c file. The position is already very unpleasant for black. His lack of any active plan. But his next move only helps white. After b6, the c6 square is getting even weaker, and so is the c7 pawn. So white simply plays bishop b4, attacking the rook on a5. So black has to go back to a7. And now bishop h3. Provoking the move f5, as I said before. Unfortunately for black, he cannot play knight e6, as after d5, he loses the knight. So f5 is necessary. White has achieved his goal by provoking f5, and so the bishop goes back to g2. It's important to keep this weak c6 square under control. And now black doesn't stand the pressure, and his next move is already the decisive mistake. Black played c6. The best he could do would be bishop f8, trying at least to exchange a pair of bishops. For instance, knight d5, threatening with knight f6 check, which is a double attack on h7 and d7. Black plays king g7, and after exchange on f8, white plays queen c4, puts pressure on c7, and white's position is better. Though black would still be in the game. Instead, black played c6 and missed the simple b takes c6, knight takes, bishop takes, queen takes, and knight b5, with a double attack on c6 and a7. He has to play queen d7, knight takes a7, queen takes a7. So white is already a pawn up, and he also has two extra pawns in the center on e3 and d4. And so white's position should be winning without big problems. I played queen b5, rook a8, bishop d6, with a simple idea of rook c7. Another good option would be d5, simply advancing the d pawn. Black played queen b7. This move is a trap. If white still plays rook c7, then after rook a1, he gets mated on the back rank. So instead of making this mistake, I simply played queen c6. I just want to simplify the position and prevent any possible counterplay. Another reasonable option would be d5. Blocking the diagonal. And so now white's idea is to play a rook c7. And in case of rook a5, white can play queen c6, queen f7 and rook d1. And then white simply moves his bishop away from d6, for instance to b4, and starts advancing his d-pawn. But queen c6 is good enough for a win. Black trades the queens. Rook a1 check, king g2, rook b1. Now rook c7 with the idea of bishop e5. Another option would be playing bishop e7 with the idea to advance the d-pawn. So after rook c7, black played king g8. Now I played bishop e7, preparing advance of the d-pawn. b5. The rook goes to b7. As you can see, there is no rush here. White has all the time in the world. So first of all, I'm preventing advance of the b-pawn. And that's in fact black's only hope. So he plays king f7, trying to bring the king to e6 and stop my d-pawn. And here I played d5, which might be slightly inaccurate. Instead, it would be better to play bishop c5 check. Black has to come back to g8. And then just d5. For example, rook d1, d6, bishop f8. Now the king comes to e2, king f3. The pawn on d6 is untouchable, as in case of bishop takes d6. White plays rook d7, winning the bishop. So rook d5. Bishop b4. Once again, bishop takes d6 doesn't work in view of rook d7 with a pin. So say rook d3, king e2. So the king takes away both d1 and d3 squares. The rook has to go to d5. And now the simplest is to play rook c7 with the idea of rook c5. And it turns out that the rook on d5 runs out of moves. So king h8, the only move in the position, and then rook c5. If the rooks are exchanged, then black cannot stop the d pawn. Or if black takes on d6, rook c8, winning the bishop on f8. So bishop c5 would be a better option, but again d5 is good enough for me. Black plays bishop e5. This move is a mistake. King e8 would be a better chance, even though it doesn't help black to save the game. So he played bishop e5. Now I could have won nicely with bishop d6 check, king f6 and bishop f8. This is a move which I missed during the game. It turns out that black cannot stop white's idea of bishop g7, which wins the e5 bishop. Instead I played f4, bishop a1, and bishop g5 check. And black resigned, as after king e8, white plays d6, with an obvious idea of d7. Rook d1 is necessary, and then rook e7 check. The king has to go to d8. In case of king f8, white plays d7 and promotes the d pawn after rook e8. So king d8, rook a7 check, king c8, d7 check, and after rook takes d7, white wins the bishop on a1 with a completely winning position. And so after bishop g5, black resigned. So this was the first example of the positional sacrifice. And we move forward to our second example.